What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and today is truly a day to be hyped about because it appears that somebody just leaked a prototype version of the Nintendo 64 Classic Edition. As of a couple hours ago, across Twitter and then Reddit, people are circulating some mysterious images that appear to be an actual functioning version of what this mini console will be. So it's very, very interesting, but I do want to warn you that there's a small chance that when I show you these pictures, Nintendo is going to delete this video because they absolutely hate leaks. So just in case that happens, do me a favor, and if you manage to see this, give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. But now, are you ready for it? Check these out. So as you can see, it looks like it's another micro system, the same way that the SNES and NES Classic Editions worked, but something that's the most unique about this is the fact that it appears that the entire front of the system actually opens up and extends, opening up a spot to plug in the standard controllers that the other systems have used. Now, this is just interesting to me because it's a very different design than the NES and SNES have done. This is the main thing that makes me think that it could possibly be fake, is that it is a giant departure just ergonomically, but it's a very good chance that this is still real, which gets me very excited. Ever since we saw those patents being founded a couple months ago, a lot of people have been talking about the fact that we are definitely going to be getting a Nintendo 64 Classic Edition simply because, well, obviously, it's going to make $100 billion for Nintendo when they release it. So many people like me are giant fans specifically of early 3D games. They were just so raw and different that they're still really fun to go back to, even if some of the controls are a little bit screwed up. So just for a second here, I really want to celebrate some of the games from this era that I thought were the best. If this Nintendo 64 Classic Edition is real, and this is an actual prototype that's just happened to have gotten out into the wild, I think that at this point, it's already going to be entering production for probably an early 2019 release date. Maybe between March and May, something that's late spring or early summer. So just looking at that window, they definitely have already selected the games they want on it if they're producing them. So I really want to kind of just speculate what I think it'll have. These are just 5 games off the top of my head that I think are N64 masterpieces. First and foremost, I of course got to go with my main man in black, James Bond. GoldenEye 007 is so sharp. I mean, yeah, let's face facts. Some of the character models look a little bit silly now, but in general, this game is still so freaking fun. And I think it'll be awesome because thinking of this, the general design of the NES Classic Edition, it came with 1 controller. The SNES Classic Edition came with 2 controllers. And I think that it's definitely a distinct possibility that we could get 2, 3, or even 4 controllers packed into the box with the Nintendo 64 Classic Edition. I mean, if they're trying to put in a lot of great games like this that are very, very multiplayer focused, it's just a smart move to put those in there, especially if they're creating them cheaply. I mean, they would be essentially losing no money and making fans like me, well, freaking play their games for millions of hours all over again. So moving past that, let's talk about what I think will definitely be on there, which is, of course, Super Mario 64. I mean, this game is such a bread and butter masterpiece. It's one of the earliest games that, in my mind, managed to properly simulate moving around in 3D environments, giving us options on where we wanted to climb, how we wanted to play, and really giving that sense of momentum. Jumping off tall cliffs or punching Bowser in the face in that game, it still feels fantastic. And it's because, in general, I think that a big part of the Nintendo 64's success was bet on that game being epic. So, of course, if you're making a Nintendo 64 Classic Edition, you gotta put that thing at the top of the list. Something that's a little bit less talked about that definitely deserves a slot here, though, is Paper Mario. This game is a fantastic RPG, and it has a really cool leveling system and a great combat system that allows you to really kind of interact with the game in a unique way. There's like a combo system built into it, and I think, well, To be quite frank, I think a lot of people kind of overlooked it. It sold enough to get sequels, but each Paper Mario game has sold less and less. And if we want any chance of getting another great Paper Mario sequel, I think it would really help to go back to the beginning, give us a new look at this ancient, awesome game. Although, to say ancient definitely makes me feel ancient, since I think I was 12 or 13 when the Nintendo 64 came out. Moving on though, let's talk about a game that's a little bit more outside the box, but one I still think would be super cool to see on this. You might not have even heard about it, but maybe you have. Ogre Battle 64. This is actually one of the rarest Nintendo 64 games, and again is an RPG, but one that in my opinion is very unique. It's difficult, it's got a lot of strategy in it, and it really kind of tests you to really look at every single confrontation from multiple angles. I'll be quite honest with you, I haven't beaten this game yet. It's so tough that some of the later levels were way too much for me. So that's part of the reason that I would just love to see it come back. For us to have another opportunity to go into this cool world and see this really kind of, I don't know, it's like a really gritty art style in my opinion that really kind of runs in such a great way back on the Nintendo 64. For my final pick, I'm going to put something that's a little bit controversial, but one that I think people will really love, which is Megaman Legends. Now, this game is something that's very hotly debated within the Mega Man community because it can be a little bit clunky, but while the PlayStation version of it is definitely superior, I always thought that the Nintendo 64 version is still really fun. It's extremely cool to get to strafe around bosses and use elemental weaknesses and actually go to a store and buy each upgrade one by one. It's a game that really sort of makes me appreciate early Capcom, where they would just do things like look at their own franchises, in this case Mega Man, and go, what else can we do with it? What would really shake things up? And in this case, turning a 2D side-scroller into a very 3D game was a smart decision. Now, they obviously went back on it later and turned Mega Man back into his very essential roots, but for this experiment, I think that it was very successful. I guess what I'm really hoping for the most in this is that it doesn't get too expensive. In general, when it comes to these classic editions, you can tell that Nintendo is trying to pick the games that they can license for the cheapest and produce in the highest number. They want to make sure they have enough of these things on store shelves so they don't have another giant shortage issue like they had with the NES Classic Edition and the SNES back at launch. But in order to mass produce these, they are going to have to pay royalties. So I don't think that we'll see anything exceptionally rare. I don't think we're going to get things like, I'm pretty sure we're not going to get things like the Castlevania 64 game, which most of us don't want anyways. That game is a very bad mess. It'd be funny to see, but in general, I think that if they want to try and keep this thing $80 or below, we're going to be seeing mostly Nintendo stuff. Legend of Zelda, maybe some Majora's Mask, definitely Mario Kart. Things that they already own, so they don't have to pay anybody else for the rights to keep them on here. I'm fully aware of the fact that if this thing does end up having 4 controllers like I'd like, there's a good possibility that this machine is going to be $100. And even then, I think I'd probably buy it. A $100 Nintendo 64 Classic is expensive. That's definitely not a small amount of money to me. But I want to make sure that if I'm getting a system like that, I want it to have all the best games that we can possibly have just built into it. You know, before the hackers eventually break in and start putting in all sorts of ROMs anyways. But what do you think? Is it possible that these screenshots are actually real and that we are very soon getting a Nintendo 64 Classic Edition, or is this all just a giant grand illusion? Something that's supposed to just basically whet our appetite because some hacker out there is trying to troll us? Let me know your thoughts down below, and also, I'm serious about this, I would love to know what games you want to see on this thing, because it is eventually coming no matter what. Nintendo knows this thing's gonna sell, you know this thing's gonna sell, and really all of us are gonna be lining up to buy it as long as the selections of games isn't absolute garbage. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Ooh, man, it's been a good day. I'm going to tilt this camera and you're going to actually see the secret project I'm working on. Oh, what's that? Is that Starlink Battle for Atlas? Cut the camera. Oh, hey. I was just playing a little bit of Grand Theft Auto on my Darth Vader PSP. Are you curious what I'm going to come out with next? Well, if you click this button, you'll be subscribed to be the first to know. Also, if you click over here and here, you can see my latest review and my latest top 10. I promise, it was super good. Or it was really bad and I'm sure you can just make fun of me in the comments. Either way, it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks so much for watching.